He was a young man known for hanging out with some unsavory characters, lawbreakers, foreigners, even prostitutes. He'd never broken a law and had in fact complied with such laws as paying taxes and registering with the government and the like. But authorities saw him and those like him as a threat, so they paid someone to lead them to him. The special police showed up and grabbed him at night. Since he was an undesirable, they felt free to rough him up and put him in a pit of a jail cell. What little legal proceedings, if you could call them that were done unlawfully at night with no legal representation, all manner of lies told about him and not investigated. And all the authorities' own reports indicated he had done nothing wrong. He was convicted. When he had a single opportunity to go before a fairly high official, the official immediately realized that he was innocent. But because the crowds were screaming, "Send him somewhere to be tortured and then killed," the official simply said that there had been an administrative error, but there was nothing he could do about it, and sent him off to his fate. The question for us on this Good Friday is, did I just tell the story of Jesus of Nazareth, or Kilmar Abrego Garcia of El Salvador, or of a number of other people who have been disappeared in recent weeks with absolutely no opportunity to defend themselves? All of them are innocent victims of a people who are seemingly full of a bloodlust. Now, Garcia is not the Son of God, but he is a child of God, created in the very image of God. His story is terrifyingly appalling. He entered our country in 2011 when he was 16 in order to escape violent gangs in El Salvador, in order to escape gangs. He dutifully reported to ICE every year, as was his requirement, and he was adjudicated not to ever be returned to El Salvador, but to be able to have safe passage here. And he began making a life for himself here. He met and married an American citizen named Jennifer, and they have a son who suffers from autism, and she had 2 other children with special needs, and he has been a wonderful stepfather to them. He's never been charged or convicted of a crime, but instead has indeed built this life for himself and his family. And his only crime seems to be that he is not a native citizen and that he has an autism awareness tattoo. Today he is in a concentration camp in El Salvador, a camp where the president of that country, who braggingly calls himself the world's coolest dictator, also brags that the only way out of that camp is in a coffin. This haunts me. It sadly reminds me that Ecclesiastes is right. There's nothing new under the sun. We have not morally advanced from that day in Jerusalem when Jesus was killed until this day. Innocent people were savagely tortured then, and they are savagely tortured now. Humanity is capable of such great evil. The things that we do to one another. And that is why we need Good Friday. It is God's ultimate protest against our violence and our hatred. God allowed us to imprison, to torture, and to murder him on this day. But God does not allow us to suffer the consequences of those sins. Instead, forgives us, and through his resurrection paves a new way for us. Jesus could have contributed to the violence. He could have, we are told, called down legions of angels to violently wipe all of us out for our crimes. And by all rates, he should have. But instead, he submitted to a horrible death in anticipation of a glorious resurrection. And so we need Good Friday to remember that story, but also to allow it to change us and our story. To cause us to give up all resentments, all hatred, all violence, and all attempts to conquer evil with evil. This Friday, we have the same choices those people in Jerusalem did that first Holy Week. On Maundy Thursday, we see Judas betray Jesus, perhaps in the misguided hope that violence and coercion, are the tools of God. We see Peter deny Jesus, refusing that he even knows him, turning a blind eye to his suffering because he was afraid. He was afraid he might be next. We see most of Jesus' other friends not even as brave as Peter. They ran away at the first sight of those police guards who came and who grabbed Jesus, seeking to save themselves and leaving Jesus to whatever would happen to him. We see the temple police knowing that they're violating their oaths, but violating them anyway, and covering it up perhaps with, "We were following orders." We see the authorities knowingly violate the law and covering it up with, "Oopsie, and it was an administrative error, and he is out of our jurisdiction now." We see the crowd yelling that something must be done, and we don't care what happens to him. We would rather see an innocent man tortured than any guilty person set free. And so they cry out, "Let their blood be on our heads." And most of Jerusalem likely simply turned a blind eye to the whole thing. They were too busy with their own lives and their own observances of Passover to have the time or the attention to give to an innocent man who was tortured and murdered. And then we see Mary and the other Marys and John and a couple of others who, although they are powerless, go to a Golgotha to bear public witness to what was happening, to mutely say that this is wrong and that they stand with and for this innocent man, even though standing with him they cannot save him. We have a choice this Holy Week. We can be Judas. We can misguidingly think that government-sanctioned torture of anyone, regardless of their guilt, is God's work and a way of accomplishing God's goals. It is not, as Judas discovered. We can be like Peter and the other friends who choose to run away in fear or ignore what is happening because we're afraid of the authorities coming after us. We can be like the crowd, cheering on the things done in our name, not realizing that if we are cheering on the things that are going on here in this day and age, we are just like those who cheered on that Good Friday, "Crucify him and let his blood be on our children's heads." We can be like those who simply turned a blind eye, who didn't have the time or the ability to pay attention to someone else's torture and murder. Or we can be like Mary and John, publicly bearing witness while being powerless to stop it. We trust that those with the power of torture and death will discover that God is still in the resurrection business, and that it is those who bear witness, even if the best we can do is a silent witness, but it is those who bear witness who will eventually experience life. What will our choice be this Good Friday? Amen.